Spy bases that could tap U.S. military communications expanding in America's backyard. A new report says Cuba has significantly upgraded these eavesdropping facilities, and gaining access to them could be a major advantage for China. The Biden administration officials said Beijing has been spying on the U.S. from Cuba since 2019. It's unclear if the Chinese spy base is among the 4 sites identified in the CSIS report. Cuba is a prime location for eavesdropping. It's less than 100 miles from Florida and nearby 7 U.S. military installations. That includes space launch centers, the headquarters of the U.S. Southern Command, plus naval and Air Force bases. U.S. intelligence says Beijing has been looking for a military installation in Cuba. And according to former U.S. intelligence officials, access to a spy facility in Cuba could make Beijing better able to identify targets to strike in the U.S. in the event of a conflict. One previously uncovered listening post is located near El Salao, Cuba. CSIS found that construction on it started in 2021. Once complete, it could be used to monitor communications from a U.S. naval base at Guantanamo Bay, just 70 miles away. Getting access to this outpost would be a major boost for Chinese spying efforts. Zooming in, images reveal a control building as well as foundations for 16 vertical antennas around it. Cuba has a history of hosting espionage operations against the U.S. The Soviets built a spy base in Cuba during the Cold War. Putin shut down the facility in the early 2000s. The communist country is embroiled in an economic crisis. Beijing has been providing assistance to Cuba and agreed to forgive some of its debt. Joining us now to discuss the suspected Chinese spy bases in Cuba is retired Brigadier General Robert Spalding. He's also a national security analyst and author of Stealth War and War Without Rules. General Spalding, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
Thanks. Great to be back.
Now, a new report from the Wall Street Journal says that satellite images show suspected Chinese spy bases in Cuba are expanding. How concerning is this?
Well, it's very concerning. In fact, when people used to ask me what I thought might be a preemptive maneuver vis-a-vis a war in Taiwan, I thought, it is highly possible that we could see something perhaps emanating from Cuba, some kind of disruption. So I do believe that China, it just indicates that China's military is beginning to expand where it goes. But more importantly, I think it does create a foothold in a very close space away from the United States that could potentially be used to create a distraction in the event of a Taiwan invasion. So, it's very reminiscent, in fact, of the first Cold War, because if you remember, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. So I'm not surprised at all that we're starting to see the Chinese, enhance a sub base in Cuba.
Expanding on that, a White House official said that Beijing has been spying on the U.S. from Cuba since at least 2019. Now, given that, what kind of information can Beijing get from there?
Well, a lot of what they're getting is whatever the Atlantic Fleet is doing, and so it's a good opportunity for them to look at Atlantic Fleet operations and really understand Navy tactics, techniques, and procedures. A lot of intercepts of military communications is primarily what they would be looking to do.
Now, to your earlier point, given the tensions we are seeing between the U.S. and China, how does what's happening in Cuba, fit into those potential military plans, especially an impending Taiwan invasion, perhaps? How does this fit in?
Well, I think it's part of the overall pattern of activity that you've seen from China. It's not just in Cuba. They're also increasing their aggressiveness around the Philippines in the South China Sea, and to include Taiwan. And then, of course, when you consider the fact that, the Russia's invasion of Ukraine and Iran's support of Hamas and Hezbollah is all kind of related to their relationship with China. And, the next thing that you can probably expect, you've already started to hear some things out of North Korea. Putin just visited. So I think you're going to start to see some things there. But it's overall pattern of activity that indicates that we're getting deeper and deeper into the Cold War, and And I think it's very important that we're focused, and we don't want that war to turn hot. So it means that we have to be on our game. Otherwise, the Chinese could be convinced that we're unable to, essentially respond. And that's the key concern that I have.
When it comes to these suspected spy bases in Cuba, what can the U.S. do to either counter this or make sure they're not getting that information?
Well, it just requires the forces that could be under surveillance to monitor the transmissions, monitor their activities, ensure that they're not giving away any of their operational secrets. And I think that just makes it more difficult for the Navy to exercise and prepare for whatever may happen in the Indo-Pacific in China's backyard.
General Spalding, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.